If someone had told me that at 77 I'd spend 2 months in a nursing home, I would have laughed in disbelief. Me? Never. Yet life has its own plans. What began as a temporary stay for recovery became a profound journey that changed everything I thought I knew about aging, connection, and what truly matters in life. Those sterile hallways and shared dining rooms initially filled me with dread. But among the residents, some visited daily, others not seen by family in years, I found unexpected wisdom and clarity about how we should live, regardless of our age. Through their stories and my own experience, I discovered 7 essential truths we all need to hear before it's too late. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below and hit subscribe for more life wisdom that comes only through years of experience. Now, let me share the most painful yet important lesson I learned on my very first day. 1. Loneliness is the worst disease of old age. My first morning at Oakwood Care Center, I noticed something far more concerning than the institutional food or the strict medication schedules. It was the silence. Not physical silence. The TV blared in the common room, staff called to each other down hallways. But the emotional silence of loneliness that hung heavy in the air. In the corner of the dining room sat Eleanor, 84, perfectly groomed with carefully applied lipstick. "She does her makeup every morning," a nurse whispered to me. "Says she wants to look nice when her daughter visits." My heart broke when she added, "Her daughter hasn't been here in 8 months." Each day, Eleanor would dress her best, wait by the entrance until lunchtime, then quietly return to her room, dignity intact, but hope diminishing. 3 doors down from my room lived Robert, a retired engineer who built bridges across America. He showed me faded photographs of magnificent structures he'd designed, pride evident in his voice. "Not bad for a farm boy from Nebraska," he'd say with a smile that quickly faded. Despite building connections that united cities, Robert himself had no one. His colleagues had moved on, his wife had passed, and his children lived across the country, too busy with their own lives to visit more than once a year. What struck me most was the contrast between the meticulous physical care and the emotional drought. Staff-insured medications were dispensed on time, physical therapy appointments were kept, and nutritional needs were met. Yet many residents were starving for something no prescription could provide: human connection. I thought about my own life, the long hours at the office, the business trips, missed birthdays, the "I'll call them next weekend" promises that piled up over decades. My impressive resume suddenly seemed hollow compared to the wealth of relationships I'd neglected to nurture. "The worst pain isn't in my joints," confided Margaret, a 90-year-old former school principal, during our weekly checker game. "It's feeling like the world has continued on without me, like I've been forgotten while I'm still here." Her words haunted me. I recognized that same fear in myself, that same dread of disappearing from the hearts and minds of those we love. Modern research confirms what I witnessed firsthand. Loneliness isn't just unpleasant, it's lethal. Studies show chronic loneliness can be as damaging to our health as smoking 15 cigarettes daily. It increases risks of heart disease, dementia, and depression. Yet we discuss blood pressure far more readily than our connections to others. If you're watching this and still have time to choose differently, please hear me. Start now. Call that friend you've been meaning to reconnect with. Schedule regular video chats with family members. Join community groups based on your interests. Technology makes connection easier than ever. Use it purposefully. For my fellow seniors feeling the creep of isolation, take one small step today. Reach out to one person, join one group, volunteer once a week. Your wisdom and time are gifts worth sharing. Remember, it's never too late to build meaningful connections, even if they look different than they once did. What relationship will you nurture today? The medicine of connection is available to us all, no prescription needed. 2. Health is wealth that cannot be bought. Down the hall from my room lived Richard, a man whose name once graced the top of a major real estate empire in Chicago. His room was no different from mine, but the photographs on his wall told a story of extraordinary wealth. Private jets, yachts in the Mediterranean, homes in 3 countries. Now at 82, he needed assistance for even the most basic activities. "What good is having a home in Tuscany?" he confided one afternoon, his voice barely above a whisper. "When I can't even walk to the bathroom without help?" His words weren't spoken with self-pity, but with the clarity that comes from painful wisdom. His millions sat in bank accounts while he sat in a wheelchair, unable to enjoy the luxuries he'd spent his life accumulating. I remember watching Richard struggle to bring a spoonful of soup to his mouth during dinner, his hand trembling violently despite his concentration. What struck me wasn't just his physical limitation, but the realization that I, too, had once taken my health for granted. I recalled jogging past the elderly in the park in my 50s, barely noticing them as I powered through my 3-mile run, certain that my energy and mobility would always be mine to command. Youth views health as a given, something permanent and reliable. We abuse our bodies, skip sleep, ignore warning signs, and postpone doctor visits. We treat our health like an inexhaustible resource rather than the precious, finite gift it truly is. Only when we find ourselves in bodies that no longer obey our commands do we understand its true value. The nursing home revealed this truth in countless ways. Martha, a retired dancer, now measuring success by whether she could stand long enough to brush her teeth. James, once an avid photographer, whose hands were now too arthritic to operate his beloved camera. These weren't isolated tragedies, but previews of what awaits us all if we don't cherish our health while we have it. Science offers clear guidance for those of us over 50. Regular movement, even 20 minutes of walking daily, can dramatically reduce the risk of mobility issues later in life. Strength training twice weekly helps preserve muscle mass that naturally diminishes with age. Stretching maintains flexibility that once lost is difficult to regain. None of these require expensive equipment or gym memberships, just consistent, intentional effort. Yet physical health is only half the equation. I watched residents with sound bodies spiral into depression when they lost their sense of purpose. Research shows mental health significantly impacts physical resilience, yet many of us neglect our psychological well-being until we're in crisis. The most resilient residents I met maintained daily routines that honored both body and mind. They read or did crosswords to stay mentally sharp. They practiced gratitude, even in challenging circumstances. They maintained social connections that gave them reason to get out of bed each morning. Look at your daily habits through this lens. Are you investing in your future health or borrowing against it? Modern healthcare works wonders, but it can't restore what's been permanently lost. No medication can replace a lifetime of good habits. No surgery can undo decades of neglect. I'm not suggesting obsessing over every health metric or giving up life's pleasures. Rather, I'm encouraging a mindful approach to the incredible machine that carries you through life. Walk when you could drive. Take the stairs occasionally. Eat vegetables before dessert. Get regular checkups. These small choices compound into the wealth of good health, a fortune no money can buy when it's gone. What one health habit will you commit to today? Your future self is depending on the choices you make right now. 3. Independence is a precious gift. I need help. Those 3 words caught in my throat like broken glass the first morning I couldn't button my own shirt. My fingers, suddenly betraying me after decades of reliable service, refused to perform this simple task I'd done thousands of times before. I stared at my reflection, shirt half buttoned, and felt my identity slipping away. Who was I if I couldn't even dress myself? That moment revealed a truth we rarely acknowledge until it's gone. Independence is not merely convenience. It's intertwined with our very sense of self. The ability to choose when to eat, sleep, bathe, or step outside is something most of us never consciously appreciate until it's slipping away. In the nursing home, I witnessed the full spectrum of responses to this loss. There was Martha, a former kindergarten teacher who raged against each offered hand, determined to take 20 minutes to cross a room rather than accept a walker. Then there was Thomas, a retired judge who found dignity in accepting help graciously, saying, "I gave my whole life to helping others. Now I'm allowing others that same blessing." What I learned from Thomas changed my perspective entirely. Independence isn't just about doing everything yourself, it's about maintaining control over your life's direction, even when you need assistance with the journey. True dignity comes not from refusing help, but from knowing when to accept it while maintaining your voice and choices. If you're watching this and still enjoy full independence, please don't take it for granted. Simple preventative measures can extend your self-sufficiency by years. Strengthen your core muscles now to prevent falls later. Practice getting up from the floor occasionally to maintain that crucial ability. Install grab bars before you need them. Replace round doorknobs with lever handles. These small changes can prevent the cascade of dependency that often begins with a single fall. Technology offers unprecedented support for aging independently. Medication reminders, emergency response systems, video doorbells, and grocery delivery services can address specific challenges while preserving overall autonomy. One resident showed me how her smartphone allowed her to maintain her book club virtually when she could no longer drive. The greatest lesson I learned about independence was its relationship with interdependence. None of us, at any age, are truly independent. We exist in a web of mutual support. Acknowledging this truth doesn't diminish our autonomy. It enriches it. The most contented residents weren't those fighting hardest for total self-reliance, but those who had reimagined independence as the freedom to direct their lives while accepting the help that enhances its quality. What aspect of your independence do you most treasure? Honor it by protecting it, but remember, accepting help with grace preserves dignity in ways that stubborn self-reliance sometimes cannot. 4 material possessions lose their significance. Before entering the nursing home, I faced the heartbreaking task of downsizing from a 4-bedroom house filled with 50 years of possessions into a 12 by 14-foot room. The antique dining table where my family gathered for countless holidays? No space? The collection of leather-bound books I'd proudly displayed? Too many? The wardrobe accumulated over decades of career and social events? Reduced to a handful of practical items. I remember sitting in my garage surrounded by belongings, paralyzed by decisions about what to keep. Everything seemed important, until it wasn't. Once in the nursing home, I discovered a universal truth. In the twilight of life, we cling not to things, but to what they represent. Across the hall, Edith kept just 3 possessions prominently displayed: her late husband's pocket watch, a family photo from her granddaughter's wedding, and a small worn teddy bear that belonged to her son who didn't survive childhood. Everything else, she told me, is just something to dust. Roy, a retired postal worker, showed me his prized possession, a simple scrapbook of handwritten thank you notes from people on his route over 40 years. "This means more to me than if I'd bought a fancy car every year," he said, eyes bright with memories. The painful irony became clear. We spend decades accumulating things we believe define us, only to discover they mean nothing compared to the experiences and connections they facilitated. The silverware matters less than the conversations shared across the table. The vacation souvenirs pale compared to the memories of laughter and discovery they represent. If you're still in the accumulation phase of life, consider this gentle warning. Ask yourself whether you're collecting possessions or experiences. When you buy something new, question whether it's adding joy or just adding clutter. practice Swedish death cleaning, regularly asking yourself, would someone be happy to inherit this? Start now by selecting one small area, a drawer, a shelf, a corner, and mindfully evaluate what truly matters. Keep what serves your present life or genuinely preserves meaningful memories. Release the rest with gratitude for having enjoyed it when you did. Remember, no one on their deathbed ever whispered, "I wish I'd bought more things." What will your legacy be? Storage bins full of forgotten items or hearts full of cherished memories? The choice remains yours today. 5. True happiness comes from simple things. Amidst the challenges of nursing home life, one resident stood out like a lighthouse on a stormy coast. Sarah, 85, radiated joy despite severe arthritis that confined her to a wheelchair. Her room was at the end of my hall, and each morning as I passed, she'd already be positioned by her window, face tilted toward the rising sun, a serene smile illuminating her features. "What's your secret?" I finally asked her one morning. "With everything you're dealing with, how are you always smiling?" Her answer changed my perspective entirely. "I don't think about what I've lost. I focus on what I still have. This sunshine costs nothing, yet it's more beautiful than any painting in a museum." The contrast between Sarah and other residents was striking. Those who compared their current circumstances to their past lives struggled constantly with bitterness. Those who, like Sarah, embraced the present moment found contentment even within limitations. I began observing the simple pleasures that brought genuine joy throughout the facility. A visiting therapy dog would transform even the most withdrawn residents. The taste of fresh strawberries in spring elicited more excitement than any gourmet meal. The weekly piano performance by a local high school student brought tears of appreciation to weathered faces. One gentleman named Frank maintained a bird feeder outside his window. "My morning television," he called it proudly. Better than any show, and the characters change with the seasons. His face would light up describing each visitor, the bossy cardinal, the nervous chickadees, the greedy squirrels. Modern research confirms what I witnessed firsthand. As we age, happiness increasingly derives not from achievements or acquisitions, but from savoring ordinary moments. A Harvard study spanning 80 years found that relationships and simple daily pleasures contribute more to late-life satisfaction than career success or wealth ever did. This shift isn't merely philosophical, it's practical. When mobility decreases, when health challenges arise, the ability to find joy in accessible experiences becomes essential. The happiest residents had mastered this art of appreciation. Try this simple practice I learned from Sarah. Each day, identify 3 ordinary moments that brought you pleasure. The first sip of morning coffee, a bird song, a comfortable chair. By intentionally noting these experiences, you train your brain to notice and amplify simple joys. What ordinary pleasure might you be overlooking today? The capacity for happiness doesn't diminish with age. It just shifts focus from the extraordinary to the exquisite ordinary all around us. 6. Forgiveness brings peace. During my stay at the nursing home, I met Harold, a 92-year-old former business owner who spent most days alone in his room. His bitter expression matched the harsh words he spoke about his estranged daughter. "She chose her husband over me 20 years ago," he'd say, eyes clouded with resentment. "I'll never forgive her for that betrayal." Just down the hall lived Esther, 90, who had suffered unimaginable loss when her son died in a drunk driving accident. Yet she radiated tranquility. "I forgave the driver," she told me during an afternoon card game, "not because he deserved it, but because I couldn't carry that burden anymore." The difference between these two souls was stark. One imprisoned by decades-old pain, the other freed by the difficult act of forgiveness. Harold's grudge had outlived many of his relationships. Esther's forgiveness had created space for new connections and joy. I thought about my own unresolved resentments, the business partner who betrayed my trust, the hurtful words from my brother never addressed, the neighbor dispute that ended a friendship. Each grievance had seemed justified at the time, yet watching Harold, I recognized the true cost of carrying these emotional burdens into old age. Medical research confirms what I observed. Unforgiveness is literally toxic. Studies show chronic anger increases inflammation, raises blood pressure, weakens immunity, and even accelerates cognitive decline. The person we hurt most by not forgiving is ourselves. One afternoon, a hospice chaplain visiting another resident shared a simple forgiveness exercise that changed everything for me. She suggested writing down the name of someone who had hurt me, acknowledging the pain they caused, then physically burning the paper while saying, "I release this burden for my sake." The burning wasn't about excusing their actions, it was about freeing myself. Many elderly face family estrangements that seem impossible to heal. Yet forgiveness doesn't always require reconciliation. It's an internal process of releasing the grip that past hurts have on our present peace. It's recognizing that the pain someone caused belongs to the past, but carrying the resentment damages our future. As I prepared to leave the nursing home, I called my brother after 15 years of silence. Whether or not we rebuild our relationship, I've discovered that forgiveness was never about him. It was a gift I finally gave myself. What burden might you set down today? Remember, forgiveness isn't saying what happened was okay. It's saying you refuse to let it control your happiness any longer. 7. Every day is a gift. Tuesday evening, I shared dinner with Arthur, a 79-year-old retired librarian who loved discussing classic literature. We laughed over dessert as he recited Shakespearean sonnets from memory, his voice animated with passion. Wednesday morning, his place at breakfast sat empty. Arthur had passed peacefully in his sleep, departing as quietly as he'd lived. In a nursing home, death isn't an abstraction. It's a neighbor, a dinner companion, the empty chair next to you at movie night. This proximity to mortality creates a clarity that's both sobering and liberating. One moment, Arthur was planning which book to read next. The next, his story had ended. What struck me most was the suddenness, the ordinary nature of his final day. There was no dramatic farewell, no checking off a bucket list. Just a regular Tuesday that happened to be his last. I realized then how many days I've wasted complaining about trivial inconveniences, cold coffee, slow internet, minor aches, never recognizing each day's miraculous gift. In the dining hall, I'd often hear residents express regret through phrases beginning with, One day I'll call my grandson. One day I'll apologize to my sister. One day I'll write down my stories." For many, that day never arrived. Their postponed joy and unresolved relationships remained forever in that imaginary future where there's always more time. After Arthur's passing, I adopted a simple daily practice. Each morning, I ask myself, if this were my last day, would I be at peace with how I'm spending it? This isn't about creating anxiety, but about living with intentional presence. It's not about grand gestures, but about ensuring that what matters most isn't perpetually deferred. This perspective transforms ordinary moments into sacred ones. A phone call becomes a chance to say, "I love you." A meal becomes an opportunity for gratitude. Even discomfort becomes a reminder of being alive to feel anything at all. The residents who approached their final chapter with the most serenity weren't those who had achieved the most, but those who had loved well, forgiven freely, and appreciated fully. Their peace came not from perfect lives, but from lives lived awake to both joy and sorrow. What one day are you postponing? What conversation, creation, or experience matters too much to defer? Tomorrow isn't promised to anyone, not the young, not the healthy, not even to those reading these words right now. The only moment we can count on is this one. How will you spend it? These 2 months in a nursing home transformed me in ways I never expected. I arrived fearing the end of independence, but left with a richer understanding of what truly matters in life. Through shared meals, quiet conversations, and witnessing both peace and regret, I learned that life isn't measured by years, but by moments of connection, forgiveness, and simple joy. We all face the same choice each morning, to live mindfully or mindlessly, to collect possessions or experiences, to hold grudges or offer forgiveness. No matter your age or circumstances, today offers a fresh chance to choose differently. Life is short. Live meaningfully, love without hesitation, and never take any day for granted, because when all you have left are memories, you'll wish you had created more beautiful ones.